Hello, everyone. Appreciate you spending some time with us today. If we somehow haven't met yet, I'm David Berkowitz, the founder of the AI Marketers Guild, and I am here with a special guest, John Reilly, the co-founder and CEO of AKKIO, and just a company that I've been excited to start learning from a little bit, and I'm going to learn way more today, and I expect that you will too. So I'm going to go and hand over the reins to John to go and share a few thoughts about how agencies are using AI on the data side. Please, if you have questions, comments, like just share things in the chat, comment on each other's things, raise your hand if there's something that you're going to want to ask live, and it'll be great to have you here participating. So, John, welcome.
Thanks for having me, and nice to meet everybody virtually. I'm going to talk a little bit about the data side of AI, and actually I'll go a little bit into ML as well. I think both generative AI and ML are wildly influencing the ways in which marketers can leverage data in their decision making and analysis, especially with regards to ad data and other things like that. And so I'll just sort of walk you through what those technologies enable and what AKKIO does. I'll start by a quick background on myself. I started my career as an electrical engineer designing televisions for Sony back in the day, the CRTs, the heavy ones before everything went to flat screens. But I learned most of what I know building product management for a lot of the products that Sonos has, the wireless audio company. So my early career was entirely on the consumer tech side. I went from Sonos to a 3D printing startup. That 3D printing startup was called Markforged, and it made carbon fiber reinforced parts, and then eventually metal printed parts. And I was leading product there, but I ended up having the opportunity to take over the marketing function because we'd had some issues with our pipeline. And the issues with the pipeline were that we'd turned off some sources of advertising, Facebook in particular, because we were getting a lot of really bad leads from it. And when we did that, after a bit of waiting time, we noticed that our actual sales funnel was choking. And it turns out, in that type of leads we were getting from Facebook, there were some really good high quality leads that were driving a lot of revenue. And there were also a bunch of noise. And so being the engineer background that I am, we started looking for mechanisms to filter and find solutions to take the data and find the good leads in the mix. And that was really the founding idea for AKKIO was, as we looked around at the available tools, there weren't really anything that an individual like myself or anyone on the team could use themselves to leverage their data to make better decisions or more intelligent routing and things like that, workflows. There were a lot of people offering ML solutions. This is now 4 years ago, back in late 2019 or 2019. But mostly as a data scientist behind the curtain, right? A services type thing. So we set out to build a self-service platform that would let anyone working in that marketing org work with data. And over the course of that time, the technology has evolved along with our platform. So you can do all sorts of things now in a really easy to use platform that you used to have a really high education or skill barrier in order to be able to do with data. And that's mostly what I'm going to talk about today. And it's been really very hypey lately about AI. I'm sure you hear about it all the time. And that's almost around things like generating copy because there was this pivotal moment where you could suddenly, our thesis has always been that user experience is the barrier to using these tools. And actually when you took a language model and hung a chat interface on it, suddenly everyone could use it. And we saw GPT take off, and now you're doing things like copy images, you're auto-generating maybe the framework for a blog post and then updating it with a person. You've seen some of the video stuff that's going on online now, coming out of OpenAI. So it's sort of reinventing the way like content is made, because now instead of having to like do all the work, you can just ask for what you want, and have an engine like generate something for you, right? And this is really just the beginning. Like the huge holding companies, all the big agencies are investing into the space, and the key part here is that it really does go beyond just sort of generating content into actually being able to work with data to make better decisions. Clients themselves are like increasingly expecting more data sophistication from their agencies. When we first started AKKIO, the idea was that internal teams at companies would start to do these data-driven decision-making workflows. It turns out that internal teams kind of lag in the market and agencies lead. And so now we're entirely focused on helping agencies deliver this to their customers because they're early adopters of the technology, and they like having more sophisticated approaches than their clients are capable of or are currently doing. A lot of this is driven by CMOs who are under pressure. And this has always been the case, like prove that this thing you're spending my money on is actually working, right? Like that's sort of the core question of every finance team for every marketing group I've ever worked next to. But they're increasingly sitting in these board meetings where their technical, tech directors are asking, like, how are you doing this in data-driven ways? The key thing is that like now anyone can sort of easily work with data, and we're really getting close to a world where there's not any silos. This is a quote from Publicis, but no more solo and no more bozos. It's gonna just be increasingly easy for anyone to do these tasks. Okay, I'm gonna quickly. If agencies are leading in analytics, we're all in trouble. Maybe that's the case, but I found it to be rather true that they're at the front end of tooling adoption. Okay, so the old way of doing things is like pretty resource intense. You have a data team or an analytics team. They have limited bandwidth. In my experience, if you have data scientists in your company, they're almost always working on I call it like the 5% problems, which is almost always your product. They're a very valuable resource. Your product is your differentiated edge into the market. So it's pretty rare that the data science resources in a company actually end up working on the marketing job. And we had that same situation at Markforged. We had data science happening, but it was going into the printing of a 3D part and the mapping of the like external structure of it so that the image that you had in your computer would match the part you actually printed. They didn't have time to work on my marketing problem. And it wasn't a good business decision to use them in that capacity. So what you ended up doing is having these analysts with lots of back and forth like engagement. As you know, anytime you introduce a request to an external person, there's a lot of opportunity for misunderstanding or language gaps. And that actually happens with AI too, and we'll get into that a little bit. I think it's really interesting. But so, you might ask to see a certain stat or to ask for a certain insight, and the answer you get back might not be what you intended, and then you got to go back and ask for it again. You end up in these feedback loops. That creates a bunch of like time lag, but also, the difficulty in sort of navigating data and looking for insights creates like a lot of wasted opportunities. And the new way is really you'll be able to just sort of ask a question and get an answer straight from the data yourself. And that means and you can actually share an analytic surface between yourself and your customer. So in some cases, they can self-serve the answer to the question, and they don't even have to bother you if their question is straightforward. And then you can share these in a way that you can collaboratively build live dashboards and stuff like that. You can also build models that predict key outcomes and use those to make smarter decisions earlier in the marketing lifecycle, optimize your ad spend and stuff like that. So it's gonna, our core thesis is that the days of like having to be certified in order to work in a tech platform are gone, right? Like that's going to die pretty quickly. Ease of use is going to rule the day, and everybody's going to be enabled. And so that's great because it means that more people will have the ability to dig in and find out what's going on and figure out how to make a better decision. So at AKKIO, we're now entirely focused on agencies and their clients. That means like we're building a platform that allows you to white label or build on top of your service to your downstream customers. We make it really easy to connect up and chat with data, build predictive models, and brand on top of it. You can connect data directly in from anywhere it lives. I'll show you this when we get into the product demo. There's the ability to merge data sources together. So if you have really nice like internal data in the agency, and then you have first-party data from your client, you can augment their data. That's a service we often see that bigger agencies offering, where they have like really big consumer databases, so they can build like really interesting audience slices, and they can actually look at lots of attributes of consumers across your product and figure out which ones are contributing to purchase probabilities. So anyways, long story short, it's got to be easy to connect your data for this process to work. These are some quotes from some of our customers about how they're using it. The Zenith side, sort of next generation BI is the ability to just chat and get your question answered. With Fathom, they're doing predictive enrollment, like targeting marketing things. And then, like things like building dashboards, which used to take you a really long period of time. And like sometimes pretty complicated user interfaces can be done, really, really quickly, sort of on the fly. So you're able to deliver a higher velocity of insight to a client. And we're even working on templating that. So once you do it once, you never have to do it again, except to do small transitions on top of it. So the scenario I will do for my demo is that you have some campaign performance data. We've got a dummy data set, so it's not perfect, but I think it'll get the point across. For a client, you need to sort of prepare, analyze, and then help optimize for your next round of campaigns. I think this is probably like a pretty common scenario. Often we see agencies like roll up with a chat endpoint, like I'm about to show you, as part of the pitch process too, because pretty frequently, certainly when we selected a pay-per-click agency, the first thing that the 3 people we quoted asked for was the Google Ads access. They looked at our past performance and then came back with a proposal. These types of things get much, much easier. So I will now walk you through how AKKIO would enable you to do that. Before I dig in, any questions on sort of that framing? Just like pause and sort of open it up to audience questions.
I just think it's fascinating, just with that one point, that like the idea of certification is dead, right? That's just.
Yeah, you get in these situations where like one person knows how to use a tool in the company, and then of course like they change jobs, and now what do you do? It gets complicated to replace them. Those tools then age out, and the hope is that like SQL, and actually how this works, and we'll get into it right now, is once you connect the data, and I'm going to show you the result first, and then we'll go into how easy that result is to create. You can use these language models to actually, hang on, I'll answer the question in just a second. You can use the language models to actually write the SQL, or in our case, we have it write Python, to go get your answer from the data instead of you having to write it. And so it's just natural language directly to data query. So how dependent is most of the data on attribution? So probably the easiest way to think about how this works when we get into the ML modeling side is you can build. I'll show a demo, but you can build a model that will learn from past patterns and then predict future outcomes. And the more features that you feed that model, and a feature is like a characteristic of the input. So let's say we're doing a lead scoring model, for example, which is actually like a really valuable model, because if we can predict whether or not a lead will convert ahead of actually going through a sales pipeline, then we can judge the performance of our channels in real time by scoring the leads that come out of them and looking at their implied conversion probability to our cost. the information relevant to the purchase is meaningful. Generally my advice is whatever you have, throw it in, and we'll show you how good of a pattern we can find. And then if you can get more and augment more in, even better. So if you're doing like demographic, firmographic augmentation using, one of the tools on the market like Zoom Info or something, you can even get like better on your predictions, right? Okay, we have a raised hand. I will call on them.
Yeah, Powell, go for it.
So this is just a question, like, I mean, it seems to me like a lot of this data that you're inputting is pretty substantial in nature. Would you be able to input, like sets of publicly accessible data, like coming out of like a, search engine management tool, or I mean, SEO management tool, or like, coming off of social media or something along those lines?
Yeah, you can pull in data from wherever, we designed, when we set out to design the platform, we wanted it to work on like arbitrary data. And so we designed it to accept like effectively any tabular data you can put together, inclusive of like, and I'll show you when we get in the actual tool, text and stuff like that. So one of the default example models we ship is a sentiment model, and it's actually trained on 2 million tweets. And those tweets are labeled as positive or negative based on if they had a smiley face or a frowny face in them. That's just the training data set. You can use it to monitor a social media endpoint live. And if someone does I had a workflow set up in Zapier back when Twitter's API was like free. And you could do things quite easily. Like you could monitor a feed. And when a brand was mentioned, we had it running on AKKIO and the competition. We would get a sentiment score. If the sentiment was negative with AKKIO, we'd pass it over to the support team so they could follow up and ask, hey, did you run into a problem? How can we help? If the sentiment was positive, then maybe they'd retweet it or like it or something. And then the inverse for the competition, if someone had a negative sentiment over there, maybe they could engage and say, hey, maybe you should check out our tool. So yeah, I guess that's a long way of answering. You can connect up like practically any data. Data sizes can be quite large. We have customers working off 300 million row data sets. We're working now on even bigger data sets. We have direct integrations with things like Snowflake and BigQuery and other large data warehouses as well. So pretty permissive in terms of the data you can pump in. And the idea being like, there's lots of different data sources out there that you might need to pull together in order to do a good analysis on something. And we actually have tools that allow you to merge them together, like with exact matching indexes or even multi-column fuzzy merges, so you can find the closest match. Let's say you have like a user's name and then like email address and the name from a different system that's not exactly the same, spelled differently. You can still find and match those records to make your analysis deeper. Okay.
Cool, thank you.
Can we talk about how it sits over one data set at a time? Yeah, okay. So there's a question from Kate about the way we work with tables. I'd like to actually pause that until we get into the actual product itself, and I can discuss a little bit some of the stuff we're working on the roadmap there, if you don't mind. But if I don't remember to come back to that question, please remind me. I think it's a great one. Okay, so this is just a dummy data set of a marketing campaign that we generated. It's reasonably small, but I think it gets the point across. So I'm just going to show you sort of a chat history and the output. We can ask some sample questions at the end of this to show you how this works. And when you share a chat, you can actually brand it. In this case, we asked, give me an overview of the campaign data as a starting point. And right away, the AI will take that and it will interpret it. And its interpretation is fairly comprehensive here. So it's going to calculate automatically for you a bunch of the different things you might want to know about a campaign, and then return those. And one of the key user experience loops that we build in the product is after we do the work with the generative AI model to extract the answers from the data, we then tell you how we did that work. So you can close the loop on the interpretation of your question. And so, the model goes based on this campaign data. Here's an overview, this many impressions, here's your click-through rate and your costs. But you can actually make this like more insight or actionable. Tell me which of these sort of varied over time that we might want to look into. And, based on the coefficient of variation, the metric that had the most was the cost per click. They have a high degree of variability. It's worth digging in. Okay, let's do that. Analyze them across different time periods, and campaign types, ad elements, placements. It does it'll make you a chart and show you the average cost per click over time. And the average cost per click by ad type. You can see a little bit more expensive on the infographic versus lifestyle and product. Keep in mind, this is just a dummy data set. So in a real world data set, you'd have a lot more variation here. Cost per click by placement. All of these charts generated on the fly just by asking, and then you can dig in and get insights. So when it was above average, what other factors could have influenced it? And you'll get an answer. Here's the types of the retargeting campaigns and influencing factors. And we'll give you even a more detailed breakdown as an appendix. If you want to minimize cost per click, which campaign placement should you invest more in? Just give you an idea of the types of questions you can ask, and it'll tell you, retargeting campaign, specifically in the Facebook newsfeed, has the lowest cost per click. That's a place you might want to look into spending, more of your money or effort behind. And then just to show you the capability, you can even take it to okay, I want to do a report on this for my client, and you can even write an email to them that embeds the summaries, of the actual data results directly in it instead of you having to write that up. Off you go. You can send it. So let me move the
window. A quick one for you. When doing that, can you? Is it at the point now where you can customize colors or say here's the brand's color scheme or your own?
Yeah. So you can I'm just asking for a random chart here. I may not have that's very clearly unworded. So let's see how it interprets the ask. Okay, so I get spend interpreted as a spend on retargeting ads. I don't know, what do we want? Blue. We're also about to launch a feature where you can live edit these to match your brand more appropriately. But you can also, well, it's kind of blue, looks almost a little bit purple on my screen, but yeah, the point is, you can sort of flexibly just ask for whatever you want and it'll do it. That's the kind of exciting thing about when you pair a language model with data. And it's actually pretty sophisticated to do this well, because it's a combination of the data structure, the user query, and the interaction with the large language model. We actually use different language models to do different tasks in the pipeline. There's a big workflow going on behind the scenes to make this actually work and be performant. Okay, let's pause on this chat piece. It looks like there's some questions. We'll take a look. So are you white labeling your tool as a platform interface over extensive data set? So the way we're built today, you bring the data, not us. We're the interface on top of it. And yes, we can be white labeled. Okay, there's a question to see the dashboard. That's a nice lead into where I'm going next. And if I was a customer, I would ask, are these numbers good or not? Are we spending in the right direction? Is my money well spent? We can, keeping in mind that this is just a dummy data set, so our mileage may vary. You can just ask that question and then we'll see what it says. Hang on, I gotta click. So how did we do? We didn't really give it a goal with the question. One of the things that I'll show you when we get into how we build this is that you can give custom instructions and you can provide suggested chat questions to the clients. And in that method, you can start to instruct what the objectives are, which will make it actually much easier to ask that question, because without some benchmarks or objectives that we've set with the client here, we'll just give you a more generic response of how it's going. But yeah, you can make that fairly detailed as well, and it's pretty flexible. Cool. All right. Now, one of the cool things is each one of these charts can be downloaded or added to a report. And I'll show you what the report looks like as soon as you click add to report. And we actually auto-generate a report when you connect certain data sources. Like if you connect up a Google Ads account, we'll auto-generate a comprehensive report that shows you a bunch of information that's going on, but you can just add a chart directly to the report. Every one of those charts that you see in the chat is really just a live data pipeline. So it actually updates as your underlying data set updates. We refresh by default on a nightly basis. You can schedule that to be a little bit more frequent if you want. So, like you can see your monthly metrics on all of your key things like click-through rate, cost per click, your spend and, CPA, click-through rates over time. You can drill down and see like your most expensive campaigns, conversions next to those, ad level views, your top 5 converting campaigns. You can quickly surface, you can surface all these tables with a chat and then save them in a report, and go in and see like what's performing well, what's performing poorly, and why. You can set the time frames when you ask for them. So, if you want to look only in the past week or the past several days, you have basically like easy access to full performance, like at your fingertips at any time. Okay, there's a few more questions. Let's take a look. Okay, there would be a difference between presenting the data and analyzing and taking decisions based on the data. Yeah, that's right. And so, where it gets interesting is when you have a shared analytics surface with your client, in some cases, you might not want to give them their own chat endpoint. You might want to control the narrative by giving them a report that you built for them. If you share a chat, you might share a chat with its history, which is what we started looking at here. You can include the questions you've already asked to get them started, or you can sort of guide their analysis when you do it, sort of flexibly up to you. You might just use it internally, even if you want, to answer their question yourself and send the answer back across. Okay, Alexander says he's interested to hear more about the different LLMs orchestrated under the hood. So one of the things that we built pretty early on was a feedback mechanism for us to judge the performance of an LLM and asking an arbitrary question about data. And the way we do that is we take like the actual user-facing interaction, meaning the question and the answer, and we package that up and send it to a vision model. We use OpenAI's vision model, GPT-4 vision, and we have it like look at that answer, and then we ask it, did this correctly answer the user question or not? Did we do a good job answering the question? That's separate from the answer generating engine, which uses a combination of GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, depending on the question type and sophistication. We prefer to use 3.5 as much as we can because it's faster to get you an answer. If the question is too sophisticated or 3.5 can't handle it, then we kick it up to 4 automatically. We have them generate multiple possible answers, and we do some code inspection and correction on our side to make sure that the code that they wrote is actually going to run. So it's a pretty complicated backend system. And then we run all of that like post-use through the how did it do like filter. And we have a large like test set of evaluation criteria we can hammer at any time. And the reason we've done all that is because language models are evolving really, really quickly and new ones come out every day. And so we've adopted a position of reasonable like agnosticism on it. We want to find the best performing model for this particular problem and update it as the models get updated. As a new language model comes out, we can drop it into the system, run the evaluation suite against it, make sure it's performing better and switch right over to it. And right now we're working on fine-tuned models, and soon we'll have client-specific fine-tuned models available where you can like actually learn from a specific customer's vertical industry and or data, compartmentalized, of course, just for that individual, because you can never leak data learnings between any clients. So lots of interesting stuff there. Okay, hopefully that answered the question about the LLMs under the hood. Happy to dig in more offline if we want to get even more technical. I'll pause there. Any questions I missed here? Okay, cool. There's a question to chat about responsible AI. but we can connect and do that on the next one, sounds like. All right, so now we've seen sort of the dashboards in the chat. I will quickly show you how do you make that in the AKKIO platform. Well, everything we do runs in a web application. It starts with connecting data. I'll just show you like an example of connecting data. You click create new project. Inside of that project in the app, you can just pick your data source. That could be uploading an Excel file or an offline sheet, but that could also be Google Ads, BigQuery, Snowflake. If you have like standard databases, CRMs, some of these are in beta. I don't think they're available to like the public yet, but coming soon. Things like Meta and Shopify. So basically, our goal here is to make it incredibly easy to pull your data out of wherever it resides. All you'll need are some permissions to access this. If you're using one of the ad connectors and you're a manager account on a client, you can pull in the client data. We've built sort of a full role-based access system. So we have a team model. You'll have a team that's dedicated to each client. So there's no cross-client contamination possibility. Your work for a single client will be within a compartmentalized team from which you will share your data and insights with them. In this case, we're working off the dummy data set, so I've already got it uploaded. Sorry, I will just click on that. And you can see, like, as soon as you import the data into the platform, we're going to automatically like detect the type of information in each one of the columns. You can navigate through here and click any one of the columns and see the intra-column correlations. This will give you an early sense of like for a key outcome. I'll click a more key outcome, like let's say return on advertising spend. It'll give you sort of an intra-column correlation. So you could see conversions are obviously highly correlated with that right away. So you can get a sense of which columns are meaningful to your outcome. You can do some like auto click cleanups. So because we use language models and interacting with the data, you can chat to transform the data or one-click transform it. So one of the things a lot of people run into is their dates are all over the map in terms of formatting. You can one-click standardize those to ISO 8601. Basic like data cleanup in a single click effectively. If you want to do like data transformations or filters, like, let's say I don't want to like consider these outliers in my cost per click for some reason. You can just chat to transform the data table. So remove outliers from CPC or something like that. That's obviously like wildly underspecified as an ask. How do you define outliers? But what you'll see is, the language model will actually interpret it. It'll figure out like exactly what we're talking about here, and it'll come back with a proposal for how to accomplish that task. So let's see, what did it do? So it identified like significantly higher or lower values in there and than the median and pulled them out. So that might be a transform that we want to apply to the data set before analysis. If you want to filter an internal data set down to a topically relevant, like if you're augmenting from an internal data set you have and joining it to client info, you might filter that down to a demographic or a locale before you actually get into surfacing chat or doing any of the merging. If you want to merge data, you just click this button, pull in a second data source, and you can join them together. You can upload or search your uploaded data sets or connect new data sets and merge in your secondary data set. The explore piece, well, that's just built right in. As soon as you've got the data set connected, you literally can chat with it yourself right here in the project builder. Or you can just click share, and that's the endpoint that I showed you that we started working from. Of course, you can configure the white labeling in the team level or in the org level, depending on if you want to white label differently between the two. And you can choose to include your chat history or not. And you can, lock down access or make it generally available to the end customer that you're sharing the link with. You can even create a Slack channel, and you can ask your questions of the data in a Slack channel. We'll send you the answers there too. We auto-generate these sort of questions based on the data itself, but you can come in here and put in a custom instruction. You can give it some context about the client. You can change those suggested questions to be whatever you want them to be. And this kind of helps like sort of guide your discussion with the client. So I just clicked of course this works just like I was showing you in the chat thing. And again, you can just like click save to report, and that will populate right over to the report where you can expand it or change the layout or adjust its location. So really easy to put together like live reports. And then really quickly, I'll just show you the predictive engine. So you can build a machine learning model to predict key outcomes. That could be a time series forecast, classification prediction, or a numerical prediction. Just for the demo here, I built a prediction to predict return on advertising spend. We'll ignore some of these tells on the input side, remove them from the model, and you can just hit create predictive model. And it's as easy as that to start building a custom ML model. We'll do all the data science in the background for you now, and what we'll return to you at the end of that are some insights about the patterns in your data and the driving factors associated with them. And then you can even take that model and you can deploy that model into a live workflow so that you can make real-time decisions based on leads that are coming in, or you could take a fresh set of leads. If this were a lead scoring model, you'd start with historic conversions and the information you had at them around the time of lead capture. You train the model, and then you'd apply your new leads based on your new marketing campaigns, and you could sort of judge the value of those leads in real time based on their probability to convert. Of course, you could point the sales team to what to do with it as well. So in this case, we can see that we're pretty good at noticing the pattern when we predict the return on ad spend by ad. We get it pretty right. It's because this is a dummy data set, I assume these are maybe we should have taken out impressions, but you can navigate in and see okay, which by positive impact, here's the relationship. Looks like actually the higher impressions, the lower return on advertising spend. Maybe that makes sense. You can see spend relationships, placement, influences. These won't make the world's most sense because it's a dummy data set, but if you're working in a live real data set, these pull out key segmentation. Here's a high return on advertising spend chunk. Here's some similarities between them. Here's a low return on advertising spend chunk and the similarities there. And then, you can, like I said, push those deployments back into your data stores or your data sources, or just stand it up even as a web app to run tests against. If we did it as a web app, in a couple clicks, you can have a live web endpoint for a model that you can interrogate. If we did it on Facebook for mobile, for I'm just making up numbers here. You could predict your return on advertising spend, and then you'll get your result back. So that's how easy it is now to build a machine learning model, learn the patterns, apply them to future predictions. Okay, that's me done talking. Let's do some question and answering.
Awesome, and I think we could start with Terry's that came in, and it's a big one, about your opinion of clients' willingness to provide agency access to sensitive revenue data.
Yeah, we found that the data access question is an interesting one. You can usually get them to agree to share marketing data in some capacity. It's probably the most shared data we see when we work directly with companies, because their IT teams are really concerned about their user data and their client data, but their marketing data, they're a little bit more open with sharing. Getting conversion information, did the person buy or not, usually they're pretty open to. The actual revenue data is harder, and you have to tell them a story about why the ML model is going to be better if they can do it. It doesn't have to be, you don't to have this work, you can have them obscure the data in certain ways too. So if they're worried about it, instead of telling you the actual revenue number, they could literally just tell you this is a high value example, and this is a medium value example, and this is a low value example. And it could be as simple as converting that number into 3 buckets. And you could learn from that. And so we even have, before we started really focusing on agencies, we had a bunch of healthcare companies also engaged in using us, and they have super sensitive client data. The thing about the machine learning models is they don't really learn from unique IDs and stuff like that. They learn patterns. So they were able to just, give a patient number instead of a patient name that they knew what it meant in their systems, but we didn't, and remove a lot of the risk of leaking personal information and stuff. So it can be a bit tricky. There's some ways to try to work around it. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to a shared understanding of the value that you'll gain by working with it. And if you can get there, then many times I think they can wrap their heads around the data sharing agreement. We've seen lots of, I mean, the bigger and more sophisticated the agency, the more legal involvement there is. These data processing agreements get super complex. We have deployment mechanisms where we actually deploy inside their cloud, so they don't have to sign a DPA with AKKIO. They never have to move the data outside of their control. So the sort of the larger the engagement or the bigger the firm you're dealing with on the back end, the more sophisticated that conversation is going to get. But it does get done. Happy to answer follow-on questions there of what I see. Of course, in many ways, this is something that agencies deal with their clients every day, right? And so I'm sure you've seen some of the complexities yourself.
Right. And then, and Tara, if you have any follow-ups, feel free to chime in. But Aaron's asking a great one about creating a marketing mix model to help measure the impact of all marketing and media spends if you had the right data, like an out-of-home campaign driving X amount of revenue attribution versus influencers drove Y, et cetera.
Yeah. So one of the nice things when you can, assuming you can pull together a data set that has similar pieces of info for different channels, you can build a model that will tell you which factors actually influence your outcome. The one thing that is worth thinking about when doing this mix modeling is the way machine learning works is it looks at historic patterns and uses them to predict future outcomes, right? Fairly straightforward sounding. The problem with a spend mix is at some point it limits, right? There's some diminishing returns point in a certain message in a certain channel, beyond which you spend more money, but your cost per lead goes up, your cost per conversion goes up, and the only way to really find those limits is to test them. We can't tell ahead of time. The machine learning model can't tell ahead of time unless you have lookalike tests really where those things limit. So what you'll see in a lot of approaches to the actual MMM is you need to do spot spend varying to see okay, I spent this much versus I spent this much, and here was the relative cost per click across those two spends. And then you can ask the model, what would happen if I spent this much? And it'll have a good idea, given the various spend levels and returns that you were able to teach it, what'll happen. And then you can start to optimize across your spends. We're actually working on a scenario modeler ourselves that'll make that easier to do than, today you would stand up a deployed endpoint and then run various trials of spend mixes against it and see what the outcome was. We're going to help you optimize by fixing some inputs and letting some float. So stay tuned on making that even easier in platform. But there is a lot of complexity to that. I think we should all be cognizant of. Does that make sense? We don't yet sit upon any of the platforms that allow a live spend allocation. We are looking at sort of some of the popular demand side platforms from an integration perspective, where we would do probably the analytics but not the spend allocation. Over time, I think you could see using those analytics in an automated fashion to drive some of your decisions on live optimization, but we don't do that yet. We're currently all about find the insights in the data, learn, make some key decisions. It's not fully automated through any of those live campaign platforms at this time, but it's obviously a good idea and hopefully where this thing goes in the near future.
Hey, John, I have a question. You talked earlier about kind of democratizing access to these insights and empowering, for lack of a better term, lay people to do data science type stuff. Do you find when you're pitching this, is there an organizational psychology component where the folks who previously had owned that are defensive of it and don't necessarily want to give data science to the masses? It's totally right for lay people to come in and ask inappropriate questions, right? Or like you mentioned, I forget how you worded earlier, but like a not specific enough request, right? And kind of having to do too much of the heavy lifting. Like, what's kind of your reaction from that community? Did they seem interested in the platform, or are you more targeting everybody else?
Yeah, it really depends. So first of all, we're targeting enabling everybody else. You know, it kind of depends on like anything, the flexibility of thinking of the call it data scientists or analysts on the team. Some cases they look at it and they think, great, this is going to do two things. One, it's going to stop all the like stupid questions that I have to interrupt my day to go do, so I can focus on the good stuff. And two, it's going to educate all of the people I'm serving on how machine learning works and how AI works and what's going on in the data. So their questions are going to get better. So we're going to have much better conversations overall. Like, this is going to be a better thing. How can I use it to like make it so that the contribution I do is more valuable on a daily basis? Now, some people are also like, you know, it's going to be problematic because, you know, people don't understand what they're asking. In many cases, though, the data sets you might build this on top of are being groomed by those analysts and data engineers. And that's kind of the key work under the hood anyways, is pulling the data from its disparate sources and cleaning it up and getting to a single source of truth. We can help you do that, but there's a whole job to be done there too. So you know, like with any big tech shift, there's a complicated time and people adjust and adapt at different paces. Some embrace, some fight. I think at the end of the day, every time a new analytics tool has come around, there's been like way more people doing like data tasks. You know, Excel didn't make less people doing data tasks; it made more people do data tasks. And I think that's what's going to happen here too. It'll democratize it. More people will get more sophisticated. And the most sophisticated people will spend their time on the like most important, hardest problems. That's like roughly my mental map of it. And it'll be a little messy between here and there.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you.
Hey, John, this is Kate. You mentioned earlier about, you know, how AKKIO sits on top of one data set at a time.
Right. Sorry.
Yeah. You said something about a roadmap. So I was really curious to hear what that might be.
Yeah. So today, you can hang a predictive model or a chat on top of a single table at a time. Although, of course, you can, as I showed you, merge in additional information to get to that single table. It's actually pretty easy for us to let you put multiple tables or multiple sources into a single project. If you don't join those together with some mechanism, then how it'll work is when you ask a chat question, like let's say you'd connected Google ads and Facebook ads and you asked a question about Facebook ad performance, then we can, like, instead of immediately looking at a single table, we'll use the language model to take that question and ask which of these tables across multiple possible connected tables probably has the answer to this question in it. Okay, cool, it's the Facebook table. And then we'll go get the answer from the Facebook table and surface that back to you. So in that way, you can imagine a world where you can connect up a bunch of different relevant topical data sets and just ask dynamic questions. In the longer arc of time, and I want to be like clear that this is not something that we think we can build in the short time frame. There's this idea of a knowledge graph. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that is, but it's like a semantic relationship between disparate data tables. If you have a knowledge graph, which building one today is actually a huge manual data engineering process, you can then query information across multiple tables and do the joins like on the fly, so that you can actually ask a question of like, what are my best performing ads, between these two data sets, considering both of them. We have this idea of building a generative version of that where we use the known data sources, known like column types, to automatically create that relational map. So I hope our sort of holy grail is that over time you just connect up any data you have, and you can just ask a question, and if a merge needs to happen, we can do that merge like on the fly. You don't even have to think about it. So that's sort of our holy grail. But today, the way it works is effectively one table at a time. If you need to bring in additional information, you can use that merge function to do so. hopefully that answers the question.
That does. The Holy Grail sounds very, very intriguing.
Yeah,
Do you
unfortunately,
have
it's
a
super
time
complex.
horizon for the Holy Grail? Is it
I don't.
months,
Yeah,
years?
think a year plus on that one.
All right.
But yeah, that would obviously the benefits there would be massive. I'm hopeful. I think on the order of like months that chatting across multiple tables will mostly get you there. You know, if you have a question that needs to be asked of two different tables, we can split it into two questions and bring you back both answers. So I think you'll find that it gets a lot of the way there, practically speaking, for a lot of the questions you might ask in the short term. But the true like Holy Grail is going to take some time.
Right, and then Tara's wondering about how intensive the implementation is and what roles within the org are most engaged in pulling it all together.
Oh, so like actually you can stand this thing up in like 10 minutes. You literally log in. We have a free trial. You know, you can do a 2-week free trial of the platform. This is not some data scientist behind the hood type of thing. And it's as simple as like having permissions to access the data wherever it lives. So you pick your data source, you put in your auth mechanism, or you just drop a file in and off you go. You know, it's literally that easy. You know, we've had some of these discussions where companies are like, so is this like a 6-month implementation process? Well, once you get past the authorization piece on the data sources, it's depending on your size of data, you know, a 400 million row Snowflake sheet might take 30 minutes to import, a little bit longer. And we're currently working on really concrete time estimates for those. But for most of your applications, you're up and running in 10 minutes.
Well, and so I say the biggest question probably a lot of folks have is just what's the best way to stay in touch? I mean, you mentioned that the trial's a good way to get started, and so just any other good ways for people to?
Yeah, like you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can, you know, we don't use AI for our chatbots on our website or anything. So if you want to talk to us in that capacity, you can just do so. It's the actual team, including myself, behind those answers. You know, because we care a lot about user feedback. It's one of the ways we continue to iterate and make the product better. Yeah, or you can just, you know, you can even just email me directly. My email is just my first name at, I'll drop this in the chat. Yeah, you can of course visit our website, but if you have a question, I'm always personally available to help answer questions or connect you to the right people on the team. You know, we don't like while it's a self-serve platform, we don't expect you to be able to do it all yourself necessarily. So we have some success folks who will help stand up the they'll give you a demo. They'll help make your trial a better experience. If you have any questions, we're here to help. And we can even help onboard members of your team into the usage. They can walk you through the white labeling feature. It's pretty straightforward, but you know, if you want to see how that works, there's some more complex things in the platform like time series forecasting and stuff that you can do that I didn't touch on today, just for depth of complexity, that they'd be happy to help with too, as you get into some of the more machine learning pieces of the platform. Sometimes you might have questions and we're always happy to help. And looks like Natasha linked some info in there as well. Yep. So all those ways will work.
Amazing. Well, this has been insightful. Can I say that? For an insights talk, and I think this is so I'm glad to see so many people chiming in and sharing how much they're getting out of this. Again, we'll send the recording. Just add reminders on how to follow up with AKKIO, and I'll add Natasha's just she's in the community, so you can DM her in Slack if you ever need anything, and just I'm also happy to help connect anyone personally. But yeah, this is tremendous. Natasha, thanks for making this happen. John, thank you for spending your time with us today, and I look forward to learning way more from you and AKKIO.
That's great. It was nice to meet everybody, and feel free to reach out.
Thanks, John. Thanks, David, for putting this together. Another great one, buddy.
All right, thanks so much.